Okay, we see a couple of extra ones coming in. It looks like the number that's on the counter down below is all represented. We'll go ahead and move on then. Thank you so much for giving us that. I believe our first speaker is Dion Sims. She's with Unity Unlimited. We'll also hear from Tarrant To and Through Partnership, as well as Workforce Solutions for Tarrant County. Ms. Dion, if you are on, please take it away.
Good afternoon. I am Dion Sims from Unity Unlimited. There I am. Okay, I see myself. Okay. Our nonprofit does a lot in the community, specifically around unity and diversity, and understanding that we all are stronger together. But the greatest program, aside from Juneteenth and what we've been able to accomplish with Miss Opal and the national holiday, is our focus on Opal's Farm and the things that we endeavor to do with helping the previously incarcerated get training so that their time served isn't time wasted. Our greatest goal and desire is to help people feel that human dignity isn't something that they've lost because of being in the system, but giving them a road to reclaiming that. One of our focuses as an organization, or especially around Juneteenth, is understanding the freedoms that are gained when the enslaved receive their news of emancipation. But in today's society, it's more about making sure that we maintain our freedom or help to restore the freedom of just being able to be a real person and a productive member of society. So with Opal's Farm, which is our leased urban farm on the bank of the Trinity, we're very thankful for Tarrant Regional Water District for leasing to us 13 acres on the, I think it's the west bank of the Trinity, that allows us to erect an urban farm that can be used for training, certification, and of course, providing food security in a food desert, which is primarily where our neighborhood surrounds. Now, the program and the goal that we have, and one of the reasons I think that we were invited to be a part of this review of information and gathering, is we have a desire to reduce recidivism by encouraging those that were in the system to get certification in the agricultural and the horticulture sciences. With the farm, we know that a lot of the times people that were in a state prison worked on Texas penal farms, and they learned those trades for making the state of Texas, a great deal of money. So when they get out, we figure like we use LVNs, and they have life experience turned towards their BSN, Bachelor of Nursing, that we could do the same thing. And so we have reached out to the Texas criminal justice system and received the job descriptions that they use for the clients in the system. And we're matching those with certification programs in the sciences. We're trying to get a college to help us be a part of their program so that people can either get certificates or they can get a bachelor's degree if they complete all of the other requisites for that degree program. But there would be a life served component that accommodates some of the credit hours based off of what they've done before. It's not a new concept. I think, though, applying it to this area would be new. And so that's what we're working on, because, again, if you make people caring and valuable citizens, then you're growing and redeveloping a segment of society that would otherwise maybe wind back up in the system. So we're hoping that we are going to have an opportunity to build human dignity by making sure folks, have a sense of worth, and then they can take care of their families. And the other thing too is that's one segment, but we'd also like to use our farm to be a part of an agricultural program, like again nursing, that have to do clinicals at various hospitals to prove that they understand the techniques of what they've learned. So we want to, again, partner with several of the colleges that offer those sciences so they can get practical implementation of what they learned. If you've looked at TCU, as well as several other colleges have simulators where the students learn by actual application of the skills they learned on mannequins that are computerized and that kind of thing. We think that we can provide that same kind of hands-on clinical application of what's learned in school on an actual nearby farm as a project to allow them to make sure that they know the things that they've learned. And again, farming is not just putting seeds in the ground. There's irrigation, there's soil topography, there's organic certification and learning. So there's a lot that we see as a benefit to increasing. One of the things that we that I think the pandemic showed us is that the next time something major comes and affects the whole nation, we're going to have to, and food and supplies get short. People are going to need to know how to have their own urban gardens in their backyards. Communities are going to have to know how to turn vacant lots into producing food and vegetation for sustaining life. So we need to take notice and start building up people that can help with those things within the community. So that's Opal's Farm, Unity Unlimited, and our goal, okay, is to make people and society in general better by taking the resources that we have at our disposal and using them for good.
Thank you so much for sharing with us today, Dion. We greatly appreciate the work that you're doing here in Tarrant County and the efforts that you're making to help decrease recidivism, as well as create food out of areas that are vacant or that are not producing anything. So thank you very, very much for your time today. Our next presenter is going to be, I believe, Mark Thompson from Tarrant To and Through Partnership.
Actually, I am with Workforce Solutions for Tarrant County. I'm not sure Tarrant To and Through Partnership is.
Sorry about that. Well, the floor is yours, sir. You're here, so you get to go next.
Perfect. I appreciate that by default. So I'm with Workforce Solutions for Tarrant County. I run a really unique program in Tarrant County called the Rise Up Young Adult Program. As y'all know, probably all the stats, we have 14% of the Tarrant County population falls between 16 to 24. A good portion of those young men and women are justice touched. They may be reentering citizens, and they are looking for options. What we do is holistic, intensive employment and training program. So I'll kind of walk you through what it looks like to be a client. We're out in the community. We're partnering with ACH, with TCAP, with Texas Juvenile, Tarrant County Juvenile, and we're engaging young adults to have an intentional conversation about their futures and kind of creating a plan about sustainability. To kind of quote a client, the things that we offer is structure, right? So a lot of these folks are high barriered. They're not coming from a strong family background in many instances. So our goal is really to wrap around and start a conversation about, where you want to go, where do you see yourself in 5 years? And we do it with evidence-based tools, right? So someone comes in, and we're talking about where do you want to go? Maybe they have no idea. We put them on career cruising, and We populate these results based on their aptitude, based on their interest. Maybe it's items that they never knew that they were able to do, whether it's CDL or IT or whatever that situation might be. And then we kind of draw out a career map. They have a career advisor who's attached to them, who's walking with them towards sustainability, mapping out their progress. And what we're doing is engaging in a conversation about what your barriers are. This is where you want to go. We now have that map lined up. What are your barriers? Is it income? Is it food scarcity? Insecurity, rather? Is it background? What is that? What does that look like? Let's start working together to start removing these barriers. And let's really focus on what your future looks like. So we take young men and women and then really lay out their pathways. It's up to them to start walking, but they have us right next to them. That way, if as barriers come up, we're able to reduce them. The great thing about what we do is we really give young adults the option of a career pathway through training or direct employment. We have partnerships with the City of Arlington, with Code Ninjas, with the City of Fort Worth, where we're creating subsidized opportunity where we have some funds that will pay for 12 weeks for a young adult to kind of test themselves with a position and hope that position turns into full-time occupation. And many times it does. In 2021 fiscal year, we put 95 young adults into paid internships. A good 40 of those people transitioned into permanent full-time work. And this is at sustainable wages, because everything is related to job sustainability. While they're in training, whether it's CDL, IT, HVAC, or they're in their paid internships, one of the other things we can do is offer support services. So transportation help, utility help. So there's a lot of Department of Labor funds that we have that we're able to kind of bolster their ability to finish. But even during the pandemic, we saw that money runs out really, really fast, right? And that money does not last forever. So an opportunity like this is really important for us at Workforce Solutions. As the folks are finishing up, we have the ability to actually, my apologies, we have the ability to actually continue to work with them for 12 to 18 months. We call that our follow-up services, but it's more like an alumni group, right? We offer them opportunities to come together as a cohort, as a class, to discuss how their jobs are going, how their careers are going. We have the ability to offer webinars where they're coming to enhance their skills in their current position, or maybe their position didn't work out, and we have the ability to walk them through the unemployment process. So the young adult population and Rise Up this last year, we've served over 260 people, put over 100 plus in training, 95 plus in paid internships, and a good portion of those were people that have criminal backgrounds or been justice touched. So that's kind of a long and short of what we do. The holistic employment, holistic training, where we're removing barriers for that individual so they can concentrate on a sustainable career pathway. After they're hired, after they're finished their training and they're hired, we continue to walk with them for 12 to 18 months to ensure that we continue to remove barriers. And we've had some amazing success stories in the last year. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. What a really neat project and program you guys run. I am a local to Tarrant County, and I didn't know that was something that was being done here in our backyard. So thank you so much for sharing your experience and your program with us this morning. I believe Jay McCall is our presenter for Tarrant 2 and Through. So sorry, sir, I didn't mean to pass over you, but the floor is yours.
Okay, great. No worries. And then is there a way that I can share my screen? I did want to just share a couple of slides quickly.
Absolutely. So the arrow up top next to the
Okay,
link
I just didn't know if I had permission to, but it looks okay. And as I'm getting that together, so as a quick intro, hi everyone. I think I know many of you. Jay McCall. I have been serving as the acting executive director for Tarrant 2 and Through, or T3, for the last 18 months or so. But I'm really excited because Natalie Williams is now the permanent executive director, and she started about gosh, 6 or 7 weeks ago now. And so as she is on board and full time, I am transitioning fully back to my permanent job at the Rainwater Charitable Foundation. But I did just want to take 1 minute and let Natalie introduce herself and say hello to everybody as she is becoming embedded in the Fort Worth community.
Thank you, Jay. Hello, everyone. So happy to be here. Hopefully you all can hear me okay. Yes, thrilled to be a part of a T3 partnership, Tarrant to and through. Education and education serving our students is really central to the work that I absolutely love. Spent time in K-12 education for about 7 years, and most recently was with Paul Quinn College, leading up their urban work college model and the corporate work program. So happy to now be able to work with the amazing T3 team and our partners to really create this, pipeline and this direct pathway for our students to find their path to and through. So Jay, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, let me make sure I know how to do this. Okay, can everybody see that? Natalie, I can only see you right now, so if you can give me, okay, perfect, thank you. Okay, so I think everybody knows this, but I won't miss an opportunity to bang this drum a little bit, which is when we talk about solutions, and I think we're all on this call to help figure out how can we improve the system to help more people find that living wage job, which we know is a great proxy for overall, family health, student outcomes, and just in general, a healthy community. And so we know that the economy is changing. We know that the vast majority of new jobs require some sort of post-secondary credential. So what we also know is that the system as it is designed currently is not meeting that demand. We know that only about 23% of our 8th graders are earning some sort of post-secondary credential after graduating high school across Tarrant County. We also know that when we look at just our low-income students or our socioeconomically disadvantaged students, that number drops to 14%. And so I think it's really important for us to understand that when we're talking about the problem, we're talking about thousands and almost tens of thousands of students every year who aren't realizing the type of success that I think we all recognize as required for a really sustainable, growing economy that works for all of us. So I want to skip through quickly and just make sure everybody understands kind of how T3 is positioning ourselves in the continuum of education, right? And so I think it's number one, I want to highlight that there are large institutions that are doing the work. We have our K-12 systems, we have our institutions of higher ed, we have some of our government agencies. And so what T3 is really looking to do is say, where across that continuum in the service should we plug in? And I think number one, when we think about closing the gaps in the system, number one is that information gap. How can we make sure that all of these systems and the way that they're designed and the way they work are communicated to families? I think we actually have this belief that there is a pathway for every single student. And oftentimes the system, it's not perfect, but it can work if students and families are given that information early in their career. The second is kind of very closely related to that and what I've just been talking about, which is the expectation that there is a tangible pathway for each and every student. Number three, this is a little bit where the rubber meets the road in terms of closing the guidance gap. So the only way that we can close that information gap and that expectations gap is to close the guidance gap. And so how can we have more one-on-one advising, guidance, counseling with students and their families early on to help them realize what those options are and what steps they need to be taking. And then fourth and finally is closing that information gap. So what I want to do is just quickly kind of lay out if given those assumptions about where we're trying to position T3, what are we going to do about it? So just quickly, we've built a team over the last 18 months that really focuses on, okay, how can we get more kids to a post-secondary pathway and then through a post-secondary pathway? So first and foremost, the one thing that I want to make sure everybody understands is that we have a close partnership with the TCU College Advising Corps. And through that partnership, we've deployed 52 near peer advisors into the 14 comprehensive high schools in Fort Worth ISD. They each have a caseload of students to help them understand where they are in the process and to help them navigate through. At the same time, we are continuing to build we have T3 Connects, which is a platform that essentially is designed to help more students connect to industry. And we have, I see several of our partners on the call, and Junior Achievement would be a great example of how we can hopefully work together for more students to have better and more tangible career exploration, more exposure to industry, and then to use those as a kind of a launch point to creating a plan for themselves after they graduate. And that's where our advisors come in. Then once they select some sort of pathway, whether it's Tarrant County College or a four-year institution or straight into a workforce development program, we have scholarships that are available. I won't go into all the details, but also really importantly is summer bridge programming to help students with that transition. And then once they're enrolled in that pathway, persistence coaching, working with those institutions to make sure that as those barriers pop up, that we can work within the system, but also outside the system to provide emergency funding, guidance, and counseling to help them navigate through those challenges. The last thing I want to mention is just powering all of this, and it goes back to my earlier point about we'd have to reach at scale across the thousands of students. It is really leveraging the power of technology to track and support students starting in high school through their pathway. And so we have a pretty robust technology platform using Salesforce, Marketing Cloud, and Signalvine that allows students who opt in to the T3 program. And in this first year, we had about 5,700 students in Fort Worth ISD take the T3 pledge, opt into the system, where we can communicate opportunities, pathways, and let them know exactly where they are in the system. The other piece that's really important is the data sharing agreements. We have formal MOUs with Fort Worth ISD and 6 other institutions of higher learning that allow us to share that data, filter by students, and then communicate in an individualized and customized way to help them figure out, okay, you've applied to college, but you haven't completed the FAFSA. You need to complete the FAFSA for your financial aid, which helps solve that financial aid gap, and then connect them to the right person within the system that can support them through their career. So that's kind of our program in an overview. I'm going to stop sharing now. And what I'd like to do is just talk a little bit more in just narrative about what we're seeing as kind of the needs and in an ideal world, what would be better happening. And I would say without fail, when we talk to students and we talk to educators, it's still about understanding what is the specific pathway that will work for my family that leads to an actual job. Like, where are the jobs? What are the high demand, high wage jobs in a local context? And so the next step for T3, and where I would really like to invest more time and energy and focus, even from like a rainwater perspective, is to go deeper with the local economy and say, how many unfilled jobs do we have? Exactly what industries are they in, and what credentials are required to access those jobs? Understanding that, and then kind of mapping back to saying, okay, well, what supports do we need to put in place to have that, to realize, or for students to realize that end goal? And so I think as we bring employers to the table, right, like that is the most critical voice. And we're so fortunate to have partners like Hillwood at Alliance that have a lot of these jobs, or Lockheed, or any of them. But the idea of where should we like go next, it's to clearly lay out to that sophomore that's sitting at Diamond Hill, here is the job that's sitting here waiting for you. These are the jobs of the future. And we're not saying that you should take this. We're not trying like placing value, but what we are saying is this is the information, and this is where it will lead. If you want to go do basket weaving, that's great. We love you. We support you, right? But what's not okay is for that student to not have the information, right? And so we feel like a moral obligation to say students and families should understand what the economy, where it's going. And then from there, oftentimes when people have the information, outcomes improve, right? Like I firmly believe in that. And then it's up to us to figure out what kind of are the systemic barriers that are still there, whether it's not getting access to financial aid because it's it's too complicated, they haven't filed their tax returns, or all those things. Then we can like tactically work through. But to me, I guess like the thought I would want to end with is how could we partner, and I really mean that kind of holistically, across the community to lift up those jobs, and to understand exactly where the economy is kind of going, and then working with our partners, Tarrant County and any other workforce development, to push that information down to students and families earlier in their pipeline. So I'm looking forward to the discussion. Thank you.
This is a really wonderful transition to questions and answers for our presenters. I will share with you in August, the elected officials, the city managers, Judge Whitley, the commissioners, they had a meeting that talked about big picture things. And this is one of those big picture things, is really doing that skills mapping for what's available in the current workforce, what the skills are needed for the next 10, 15, 20, 25 years. And then how do we match that up locally instead of having to import workers to meet those needs? So with that, I will open it up for questions, conversation, and then we'll move on to our feedback session after that. So anybody brave enough to ask the first question and get the ball rolling?
I want to ask the young lady who's going to replace Jay to connect me with people at Paul Quinn. I have been trying to reach President Sorrell because we were very impressed with him, one, being sent to close down Paul Quinn, and then not doing that and, saying, you know what, we can do something with this football field. And they turned it into a farm that now services the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, and so we've been wanting now we have visited the farm, we've talked to the farm manager and the program manager, but I think that there's a partnership there. And now TCU is here, local to us. They've helped us with our soil topography and all of that. And so we want to work with them. But I thought that a good HBCU would be a good connection to help brand and have a satellite in Fort Worth. So any
Miss
help.
Sam, I can hear you. I'll have Angel connect you via email, and I'd be happy to give you the individuals who have taken over my role with the farm.
Thank you so much. Okay.
Sure, no problem.
Any other comments? Any other discussion?
Catherine, I have a comment. I wanted to touch on something Jay said that was super important, and I didn't touch on it in my little portion. So the idea of making sure you understand the trends of the local economy are so very important. We actually have a business service team that's out there that is broken down by industry sector, developing relationships that are where we end up putting our young adults as far as paid internships, as well as seeing where the trends of the for vocational certifications, because Jay had mentioned that as well. So those are items that we actually can fund when we're looking at Lockheed. We can send folks down to CLC and fund their aerospace manufacturing program, or Amazon's coming in and Schneider's coming in. We need more CDL drivers. We have that ability to send people to C1 or to Goodwill. So one of the things within that comprehensive program really is teaming up with our business services and understanding where those trends are going, and also, making sure that we're coaching and informing our clients on the labor market, information on where they're going to best be able to, move towards sustainability and have a career 15 and 20 years down the line.
Great, thank you for that, Mark.
I have a question. Mark, I know that you're the workforce, you guys are engaged with reentry, but for the last presenter, I believe it was Jay, the opportunities that you guys are creating, does it lend itself to the reentry community?
So absolutely, we actually have a really unique partnership. We have the traditional partnerships with Tarrant County Juvenile, but we have a relationship now with a group out of Tarrant County called TCAP, and they actually work with individuals that are in high school that are transitioning out that are justice touched. They're part of a larger organization called YAP Inc., and they're an awesome organization, and we've been connected with them for the last few months. And one of the things that we want to look at with potential funds is having a hardship fund, since it is a unrestricted monies, and maybe that's something that we can help folks with when, okay, I now have a small ticket, you're a client, and that ticket's going to turn into a warrant. Maybe that's something that we can use money for to prevent that one stage. But Worth has a cool program, it's a safe haven program that they do warrant forgiveness, but Fort Worth alone has that. The greater Tarrant County doesn't have that. So that's some of the things that we're looking at as far as funding, to see what types of hardships that we can fund that normally we can't use with Department of Labor dollars. And that's kind of one instance there.
Okay. As well as for the other presenter. Did you log off?
Is Andre, this is Jay. I just want to make sure I understood your question. Is like, are you saying how would our program potentially support that special population group that you're talking about?
Yeah, the reentry community for his employment as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I think the one thing that T3, and it's like really important to like keep the guardrails up, right? To not be all things. We are typically focused on the traditional student, right? Like knowing the vast majority of the population we're trying to serve is that traditional. Where I do think there's areas to partner though is like as we get a better handle on what some of those number one pathways that are available are, and then also exploring the other like financial aid opportunities that are out there. Like I think, in the ideal world, when I look up 3 or 4 years from now, T3 will have like a robust set of financial support opportunities that aren't handled by T3, but that we're kind of sourcing and keeping up and then pushing out to students and families to say, here are the pathways and here are all the other partners that support in those ways. So that would be one way where I could see that tangentially supporting that group.
One of the things, Jay, that we're looking at doing is working with employers to, I guess, to maybe kick off an initiative, this clean slate policy or a clean slate initiative. And that's really for the individuals who have been to prison, not so much violent crimes. We know there's an exception, but individuals who have been to prison, they're off parole. They haven't offended in the last 3 years after parole or after probation, for those individuals to literally get a clean slate. Because we work with a lot of individuals in our population who are licensed, who have degrees, who have masters, and decide to go another route many years ago. But they spend a lot of money to get those master's degrees. And now they're still working for $10, $12, $13 an hour because it's difficult to find employers who will give them that opportunity now that they're off parole and they haven't reoffended, but the background is still that barrier. So a lot of times when we think of reentry, we're looking at, first thing come to mind is forklift, welding, CDL, things of that nature. But you have individuals who have a variety of backgrounds. And one of the things I want to share with you guys from working in the reentry community, I really identified there's two groups here. You have one group of individuals who have committed crimes and have a criminal background, and you have individuals who have committed crimes, who have a criminal background, who are criminals. It's two different groups with two different mindsets. But however, what I am finding is a lot of the times individuals, if they have a criminal background, they're automatically put in the category of criminals, and that's not fair.
Yeah, thank you for that. That's a really important perspective to keep in mind, especially whenever we talk about workforce development.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. One of the things that came up at the meeting a few months ago with the electeds and the city managers was there was a conversation. I believe I saw our TCC chancellor hop on as well. There was a conversation about maybe developing some sort of working group who meets periodically to really dig down and start addressing these issues that are far and wide across Tarrant County. Obviously, Angel and I are only with you guys for a short amount of time. Our final report is due in January, but one of the things that I think we would take really significant pride in is if we can help facilitate the beginning of that. And that's, I'll put that to the group, and if you're interested, great. And if you're not, then we can move on and I'll keep my mouth shut.
So for what it's worth, I'm with Junior Achievement, and Catherine, I think, you know, Cindy and I talked to you and Angel about that topic as well. I know that I've had numerous conversations with Jay and also with Natalie about this, other community leaders, and since we really focus in that K through 12 group, we already are having small conversations, but not with elected Tarrant County officials necessarily, or city managers. I 100% believe that that is necessary, because I think we need to get the employers together. We need to get nonprofits like us together, and really sort through what that looks like so that we have a clear plan to present to whoever needs to be coming on as an investor for that path. And I think even though we're in K through 12, you know, learning so much more about the reentry population and what the community is trying to do with that, we may have these two different categories of people we're working with, but they're all related, and we've just got to figure out how to map that out. So
yeah. And I would like to add to what Kathleen is saying, you know, so if there are different lenses, one of the lenses that's important to Center for Transforming Lives is really that single mom with children under the age of 5 or 6, because, you know, as we're talking through these wonderful certificate programs and other kind of educational opportunities, but lack of access to childcare, and the limited number of subsidized spots that we have and the way that the system works means that single mothers are most often left out of those conversations. And it's single mothers of, you know, of any age who have children under that age of 5. So we would absolutely want to participate in conversation and continue to help that lens be one that's remembered.
Thank you for that, Carol. We're actually holding a out-of-school quality childcare roundtable in a few weeks. We're trying to finalize the date and the presenters for that too, knowing that that was one of the main issues that kept coming up throughout, you know, this whole process is the lack of access to quality childcare for not just for single mothers, but systemically across Tarrant County.
Well, and I think actually what I'm trying to, childcare quality is kind of in many ways a different conversation.
Sure.
Because, you know, why I think it's important to bring forward in the workforce development is that, you know, like a CDL class, the women that we can refer to CDL classes are women who don't have a child who needs childcare. I mean, and very similar. So that opportunity to complete a high school education or a post-secondary certificate just isn't there if they don't have access to childcare, regardless of quality.
Yeah. Thank you for that. Any other comments or questions for our presenters?
Good morning. This is Catherine Arnold with Pathfinders, and I just wanted to add, Jay, I loved that you said living wage jobs are a great proxy for healthy families. I just think that is so on target. And while we do not provide vocational training, I certainly want to express the need for, we've talked a lot about those supportive services, and one of them is financial capability services, because if we get somebody in a living wage job but they don't know how to manage their money, they're really not going to be any better off. And so I'd love to be a part of, Katie, the group that you are talking about putting together. And thanks for all the great presentations today.
Thank you, Catherine. We will go ahead and move forward. We have a couple of questions for you all. As a reminder, this is probably one of the very few meetings you'll ever come to where we ask you to pull out your cell phone instead of put it away. But I wanted to talk a little bit about the project that we're working on itself. So some of you have had these conversations with us. You kind of know what we're doing. So we wrapped up phase 1 at the end of September. We presented an interim report with the findings from our conversations with those of you who we got to talk to. This is now moving into phase 2. So we are right in that orange colored box where it says, how do we prioritize objectives and create equitable strategies moving forward? One of the things that we have been very intentional about through this process is making sure that we're really using data-driven priorities, meaning who is in the greatest amount of need, who could benefit the most from these programs or projects that we're proposing. We also wanted to ensure that the communities that we were engaging are the communities that would be served. So we have been very intentional about making sure that we're using trusted community messengers. We're having representation from not just your typical, K through 12 student who's going into the workforce, but also Dion's project that she's working on with recently released individual, sorry, I don't believe that's the right term, but people who are facing reentry or in that reentry process. And then also people who may just need a little bit of additional help. And part of what we're doing is we're really evaluating the benefits of what we're proposing and then identifying the barriers that may prevent people from being able to access that. And then how can we break down those barriers to make sure that they're not there, or at least they're a little easier to get over. So Angel, if you'll go to the next one. So some of the stuff that we included in our interim report, these were the findings that we had for local businesses. So pre-pandemic, we had about 43,000 establishments. And this isn't a surprise to anybody, but the impacts of COVID, there was obviously lost revenue. We had a significant number of small businesses that closed. We had significant job losses and disproportionate impacts to certain sectors. So leisure, hospitality, healthcare, and education, and then a disproportionate economic impact on women-owned and minority-owned businesses. And then for workforce, we had an unemployment rate of 3.4% in Tarrant County in August of 2019, which is not too bad. And then we saw it jump to 6.4 in August of 2020. And then it was back down to 4.9 this past August. We also saw about 33% of U.S. workers telework as of June 2020, and that dropped a little bit in September of that same year. And I think we haven't seen the numbers for this yet for 2021, but I think we're going to see a pretty similar trend where it may start to drop a bit. But we did see increased need for job training and job placement, kind of like what we're talking about, and then challenges and skills matching between workers and available jobs. But also some competitive wages. So for those high earning positions, not having the right people there made it very difficult for them to keep people in those positions. So we saw some competition between different businesses that were trying to recruit the same individual. So all of the recommendations that we made, I don't know if everybody's seen this. This is actually the county's 4 focus areas for the ARPA funding. and then the goals that are associated with each of those focus areas. So every recommendation that we made is tied back to one of these goals, and you'll see what I'm talking about on the next slide, I think. So the workforce development specific recommendations that we made to the county were direct grants to businesses and nonprofits within those affected sectors, and or them being located in the qualified census tracts. We want to expand technical assistance and entrepreneurship training to women and minority-owned businesses, as well as historically underutilized businesses. And then we also want to partner with college and workforce readiness programs to expand preparation efforts for Tarrant County youth. We also want to provide support to incubators and accelerator programs to support innovation in Tarrant County. We didn't talk a lot about that today. That's something that I think is a very niche group, but something that we're willing to explore further in the future. And then encourage creation of apprenticeship programs for graduates of technical training schools. So here is where we ask you to pull out your cell phones, and it's menti.com, and then the code is 8375041, and I believe it's in the chat as well. So we'll have a couple of these. We just want to know, what have you seen change in the immediate needs and priorities for the workforce or the populations that you serve over the last 18 months? And these will populate real time, so as they come in, you'll see them show up.
Just to be clear, are we answering this from the population's perspective or from the business community's perspective?
From the business community's perspective. So what the services that you provide, what have you seen essentially like an increased need for? Have you seen changes in needs, that type of stuff?
Okay.
Got some stuff coming in. So Tim asked if we could send this presentation out. Yes, so we'll pull down the captures especially for the feedback. We don't want you guys to miss that, and then we'll share that as a result of this. So because of the system that it's in, it's a little difficult just to pull the actual slide deck, but we'll pull the information that's being shared and send that out to y'all. Okay, Angel, do we want to go to the next one? Okay, so based off of the recommendations that we gave to the court, if you will prioritize the following recommended programs, so that's businesses and nonprofits, technical assistance and entrepreneurship training, college and workforce readiness programs, incubators and accelerator programs, and then apprenticeship programs. I had a slight feeling I knew what the top rated one for this group would be, but sometimes we get a few surprises. Okay, so the college readiness and workforce development priorities. So we have these broken out into some of those special sectors that we talked about today. So high school student college readiness, program development and implementation for skills training, second chance programs, skills matching services, survey and compile existing training and resources, trade skill apprenticeships, and then workforce readiness. And we're just asking you to rank those priorities. Okay, our next question is about entrepreneurship support priorities. So we have a couple of these: pivot solutions for sector-specific barriers, social media training and marketing plan assistance, support for accounting and financial management, targeted grants for industries disproportionately impacted by COVID-19, technical assistance for business plan development for businesses and qualified census tracts, or technical assistance for minority and women-owned businesses. Okay, let's go to the next one. Okay, and then are there any additional recommendations for workforce development you would like to see considered? So we do have a final report due to the court in January. The information that we're compiling here will go into that report. When we make recommendations, we make recommendations with the understanding that at the end of the day, the court is the one who gets to decide what they spend money on. As much as I would love to be able to be the one that says yes or no on things, just keep that in mind. But also, part of our responsibility is to make sure that it's something that's actually an allowable expense with the FRF funding that they're receiving. So some of the recommendations that may have been made may not have matched up with one of those allowable expenses, but we're always willing to consider anything that we hear. Our job is not to determine what goes in and what doesn't, it's to determine what's eligible and what isn't. So with that, I'll leave you to brain dump, so to speak, on this question, and we'll take everything into consideration. Oh, Angel, can you go back just a second? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, these are all great. Okay, we are at the end of our time today. Thank you all again so much for giving us an hour of your time. We know that it's incredibly difficult to step away from your normal day-to-day stuff, but we greatly appreciate the input that you've provided us today. And thank you so much to our presenters for such wonderful, wonderful content and conversation. We will send out what we can. So we'll pull down the feedback that we got from you all. We'll share that with you. And if you're ever at court and you see me, please stop and say hi. I love meeting people face to face whenever I'm not behind a computer. So thank you all so much. Have a wonderful day, and hope to see you all soon.
Thank you, Kathy.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Catherine.